Welcome to video 9 in series 3, and in this video I'll show you how to use tags to differentiate between game objects and also find game objects that have that tag. So first off, I'll set these cubes here. They currently have no tag, so they're untagged, right? So this is where you add a tag. So I'll add a tag, a brand new one, and I'll call it enemy. Now I need to assign it. Those ones that you see here, these are defaults that come with Unity. This is the one I've just added, enemy. So to quickly assign it, I can just control select all of the cubes and then just click enemy there. Alright, that's done. Now I'll go to the shoot script, and instead of having the debug log statement that I had before, I'm going to do a check and then run that instruction. But before I do that, a YouTube viewer pointed out something really useful, and that's for the line ending stuff. And you can actually save it in the required format ahead of time, so you just save it, and then when you do that, then you won't get the warning message in Unity. Alright, so now that I've done that, now I'm going to do a check for the tag. So here where I've fired my raycast, now I'm going to check what the tag of the hit transform was. So if hit.transform.compare tag, and what was the name of the tag? It was enemy. So you have to type it in exactly how you've written it. And so if the hit object has a tag of enemy, then I'll run this instruction. And I'll modify it just slightly. Inside of it, I'm going to write here enemy, and I'll put a space here, plus. This is how you add two strings together, so it'll read enemy, a little space there, cube, enemy, cube 1, enemy, cube 2, like that. Alright, so then in else I'll just say, well, debug log, I'll just say not an enemy. Alright, so if I just jump back now, hit play, go in, and there we go. Enemy cube 1, enemy cube 2, and if it's the floor, it's not an enemy. Okay, so that's that. So now you know how to use it to differentiate between game objects. Another really common use is to actually find game objects with that tag. So I'll just make a new script. It's just an example, that's all. I'll call it, say, find enemies. And I'll just put it in there. I'll attach it to the player. I can attach it to anything. It doesn't actually matter what I attach it to. It's just for example. And then I'll open it up. Okay, I'll just say reload all. Once again, I'll come here and I'll just change the line endings to begin with. Okay, and sometimes it doesn't want to save. It doesn't want to save when I hit Control S. So I'll just do this manually. I'll just close it down, go back to Unity, open it back up. Alright, and it's fine now. First thing, namespace, because since I'm doing that, chapter 1. Okay, and I'll just grab all of this, put it in there, and just tab it. Okay. Alright, and now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an array to capture all of the game objects that have that tag. An array you can think of as like a belt which has slots in it, and that is, well, that's it. An array has slots, except an array can have as many slots as you make up. In this case, I'm not going to define how many it starts with. It'll just add them as required. So I'm going to make it of the type game object. To make an array, to make your variable an array, you put 2 square brackets, so it's of the type game object, and I'm going to call it enemy, or enemies, rather, I'll call it that. Okay, and that's it. It's currently empty. It has no slots at the moment. I have to do something. So, well, what I'll do is here, I'll make a new function. I'll say search for enemies. And then the way to do it is you say you'll assign to enemies with the equals game object dot find game objects with tag. So this will find everything that has a tag. This is, by the way, a very slow operation. So any find game objects with tag are slow operations. So you try to avoid doing that inside of an update, and you would rather do that in start or awake or something. Well, probably start, rather than trying to run it frequently. So you try to not do it frequently, or when you have a menu open or something like that. Okay, so what is that tag? That tag is enemy. Okay, done. Alright, so I've got my array now. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to iterate through the array and just display the name of whatever game object is in that array. First check I need to do is say if enemies.length is greater than 0. So it shouldn't be an empty array. I shouldn't try to iterate through an empty array. So if there was nothing found, then this won't run. It'll just find, oh yeah, the length is 0, so I won't run the rest of this code. Then I'll say for each. So I'm going to iterate using a for each loop. There's a couple of different types of loops. So for each game object, you have to state the type of the type that you're iterating. And because this is the enemies is of the type game object, I have to say that each thing that I find in enemies is also a game object. So I'll just put in geo. It's quite a common way to say it. It means game object, except just like that. You can call it anything. For each game object go in enemies, so for each item in enemies that's of the type game object, then I will say debug.log go.name. Alright, now I need to call the function, of course. So I'll say search for enemies, done, and this should work. So if I come back, clear the log, and I've already attached it to the player, and I hit play. There we go. It finds all the game objects that have the tag enemy. Now, another thing to note is that if the game objects are disabled, so they're not active rather, yeah, well, same thing. If the game objects are not active and then you run it, they won't get found. So that's something to remember, that deactivated game objects are not found with these game object.find or find with tag and so on. Now, if you needed these, you needed to store a reference to them in an array or a list or something somewhere at the start of the game, but you then wanted to disable them because you're gonna have them activated when the player is close enough or something like that, then what you do is you then deactivate it once you've got the reference to it. Once you've established the reference to it, then deactivate it. So you could say go.setActive false, for example. And then now when I run it, I'll have established a reference to each one and then deactivated them, and I could reactivate whichever one I needed to, well, when I need to, because I now have the reference to it. I know where it is, its position, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's it. That's a little bit of an intro on using tags. You can do quite a bit more than that with them. But anyway, that's enough for this video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.